Okay, so thank you for dialing into today's webinar. Everything scheduling UniPhi style, bit of a contentious one. So I'll go to the agenda now, and basically what I'm going to do is first give some background to why UniPhi has approached scheduling in its way, the sort of philosophy that we've followed over the years to develop the application to do time management in the way that we do it, and basically in that do a bit of a business case as to why we think this method is the best way to go, and then obviously jump into a demonstration on the actual application to show how we do the sort of stuff that I'll take you through as a background and business case. So the sorts of things we'll look at is MS Project P6 integration, stage gates, milestones, and synchronizing those to those integrations, using the issues module as an activities module, and some of the people on the call won't know that the issue module is an issue module because theirs is actually labeled activities. Actions within those, viewing people's allocations across the resource pool, communication threads and dashboards to visualize timelines and how things are tracking. I'll then do a quick sort of window into where we are taking that philosophy into the future with regards to machine learning and AI around time management. So that's the schedule. It's a little bit, the agenda, that's a little bit bigger than normal, so hopefully I can get through it in time. So just getting out of this, well, actually it's the next slide. You're going to have to indulge me a little bit here, but I think it's important just to understand the sort of background of how long we've been thinking about this stuff, and a lot of lessons learned along the road. We were quite passionate, control-based, Gantt Chart-based schedulers back in the day, and we've kind of evolved over time to where we are today. So to put that into context, MBH, which is a management consultancy sister company of ours, that actually was the original company that produced UniPhi, started in 1999, and its premise was a management consultancy around PMO and project management capability development within organizations. The natural sort of progression of that was to become an RTO, which is a registered training organization issuing qualifications in project management, and that happened in 2003. And that organization still exists and is still delivering qualifications now. And then in 2005, the first release of UniPhi occurred. So, this journey is now 20 years old. It's been, we've been thinking about this stuff basically since that time. And to give you a kind of flavor of what I'm talking about there, this is a bit of a time warp. I've got people working for me now who either were just born or didn't exist when this development actually happened. Sorry to those newcomers that just came in. I didn't get the pop-up that I needed to allow you into the webinar, but you haven't missed much. What I'm doing is just giving you some background as to how we came about with the scheduling philosophy that we have. And what I'm about to show you is a product that we first had in the marketplace 20 years ago. It was our first product that we released in the marketplace, and its design was to help us grow capability in portfolio, program, and project management in enterprises. And this is it. Don't laugh too loud, but this is it. Looking at it on your screen now, hopefully. And it's basically a static intranet site that has a whole bunch of workflows and instructions on how to do things. And you can see that, we had this basic 4-phase life cycle. We talked about stage gates through those processes, and we would enable people to sort of read up and learn how we should go about doing things. And even back 20 years ago, focus within our business was around collaboration. And if I click on the workshops, for example, you can see there's a bunch of workshops to scope out projects, and then you click on that and you get this flow chart that you can then click on a certain step and you'll get a pop-up about what you need to be doing. And so, that was something we rolled out reasonably successfully for about 4 years, but the issue was we weren't tracking the projects through the system. It's purely static. But something interesting that when I went and reflected on for this, is you can see under project planning, we're talking about scheduling, and we've got some Gantt chart guidelines in there and some do's and don'ts. And, it kind of, this is 20 years old, but it kind of links, the philosophy's kind of still being coming in there, keep descriptions brief, which is an issue, that we had to address over time, and I think we've got that now. and various other things in the do's. And if I go to the don'ts, there's something around it'd be too detailed, constrained task and less. I mean, that's quite interesting that some of these don'ts were in a presentation at a conference I was at recently by another vendor around scheduling. So these sorts of conversations are still happening today, but I guess we've kind of moved beyond some of these things, and we'll show you why we've moved beyond them through the presentation. So that's the sort of first product into the discussion of where scheduling and philosophy around time management came from. The next thing is to actually discuss the traditional methods for time management. And this is a PowerPoint deck that was parallel to our training program back in 2003. So this is a very old, again, it's a 16-year-old PowerPoint slide. And if I just run it through from where we would start the time management element of our PM training, we're talking about work breakdown structures. And then, task lists. And, that's the fundamentals of where it all starts even now. What is a work breakdown structure? How does it look like? What Gantt guidelines? Average duration of 5 days, etc. Network diagrams, forward and backward passes. So these are the fundamentals that possibly still get taught today, and the extensions of that being the theory of constraints, buffer management, that type of thing. Now, basically what we're talking about in this is that this is all forecasting. And so whenever we were teaching this, it was about predicting and coming up with a bunch of activities that you think you need to do to actually run your project. And then you can get management tools that we were teaching people in managing critical path and managing critical chain and resource allocation issues and the like. There's only one sort of failure in all of this, or fraught with danger anyway, and that is that we're assuming that this relationship that we've created here with these tasks in the screen that you're looking at now, where we're doing a forward pass and then we're going to do a backward pass coming back and identify our critical path. One big issue with this is that it assumes it's correct. And that's a big assumption, and if it isn't correct, it pretty much is worthless. And so if your crystal ball gaze of a project is able to identify the specific activities that need to be undertaken, and they're very clear, and you can have volatility around the effort estimates, but if the relationships are wrong, and if the actual tasks that you need to do are wrong, then it's pretty much worthless. And that's the fundamental that we took about 5 years, 7 years to come to the conclusion of, that this stuff really only works when you're running a simple project. One that you've done before, one that you've got a history on what the work breakdown structure is, how it actually happens. So it actually is very good stuff for operations, very good stuff for lean manufacturing principles, where you can analyze processes and break them down. You've done them 1,000 times, you know how long they take from benchmarking, and you can work out critical chain and resource constraints along your logistical pipeline. Projects tend to have elements to that. There's no doubt that there's elements within a project that are like this, and therefore these tools are great. So you don't throw them away, they're great for that purpose. But when you get into grey areas, when you get into things where you don't actually know what it is that you need to do, or it's a bit vague, or the dependencies aren't 100% clear, then it becomes a little bit less, well, it becomes significantly less useful. So we started to look into complexity around 2003, and complexity in project management, and how does that relate. And so from that scenario, we did a presentation last year that basically outlined our thoughts on this. And so what we've come up with is the fact that we need data, and we need to get feedback, which is why we actually developed UniPhi in the first place, is that as a project management officer or senior executive, they can't really get visibility of what is actually happening on the ground. And so we need this distributed data capture to manage complexity, because it kind of evolves over time. And so this is just the press. Complex adaptive systems are known in the natural world, and they've been identified in natural sciences. And in complexity theory and chaos theory, there's this amazing evolutionary process that happens, and I think humans are part of that network, and it happens in organizations, and it's the most optimal outcome for performance if you can create complex adaptive systems. And within those systems, there's certain properties that exist. There's a natural hierarchy. Very small changes in initial conditions have large changes in outcomes, so butterfly effect type scenarios. The outcome is evolved over time. It emerges rather than being predetermined. So this whole breaking down the work that you've got into smaller chunks and allocating that out is kind of the antithesis of complex adaptive systems. There's a lot of self-organization, and so again, project managers struggle with this in the sense that they feel they're supposed to be allocating the work. But even in assembly lines, there's been some studies done, and I'll put the links up on our site after this, where if you actually let the people on the assembly line automate or optimize their process, they'll do a far better job than a process engineer coming in and re-engineering their process for them. So these self-organizations are crucial to it. And then therefore the overall behavior of the system is a result of a large number of transactions, a large number of conversations daily. And we need to think about, is our Gantt chart really a reflection of that? And so here's an example. We've got a P6 schedule or an MS project schedule. It sits on my laptop. I'm the updater of it. I have to get feedback from people. I'll put them in a room. We'll go down the list and they'll give me some information. There's only so much I can put into that system. There's only so much time in the day to actually get data into there. So there's going to be fewer data points than if I had, for example, 300 people putting information into the system that was actually helping them, but was also schedule-based. You need to get a feed of statistics from contractors on where they're at. It always fascinates me when people have an activity that's outside their control, for example, shipping or something, and they'll just put a big bar in a Gantt chart and say that's the shipping bit. But obviously there's 100 activities that are going on in that process that aren't tracked and aren't really known about. It's just that, there's this big block for shipping. If something does go wrong, we have no idea why. There's no conversation, there's no background causes, there's no ability to interrogate why that task took longer than we thought. And all the data that's stored there is in disparate systems, so people are hammering P6 schedulers for information. Can you tell me this? Can you tell me that? And again, that information's delayed. Right. So the unified model is that we have lots of input systems that are easy to use for end users to actually go in there and do their job, and they know what they need to do and they tell us what they've done. That comes into a centralized data layer, and then we can do analytics and create artificial intelligence around that. That's the goal. In-field systems, management systems, activity systems, whole bunch of different systems. Now, UniPhi has a lot of functionality that data captures stuff, but we also pull in data from different systems where necessary to get that richness. And then we provide, as you'll see in the presentation, this new API interface into analytics to be able to analyze that information. So what am I talking about in terms of data types? I'm talking activities, issues, risks, documentation. They're all pieces of information that I can capture in my product. Those pieces of information have subtypes. There are photos that go into those activities. There's conversations that goes into those activities. There's ratings, high, medium, and low go into those systems, and due dates and the like. And then those activities are wrapped around a specific project which has a sector or a project type or a location or a role. And it has people allocated to those roles. And we know who they are, and we know what job specification they have and what their experience is. And, we start to have all of this extra data that's wrapped around those activities. And so we've actually finally got the Nirvana deployment where this is actually happening. And it's a large-scale program of works. It has, it's going to run over 6 years. It has $4 billion worth of activity going on. And our application is being used to manage design. And within that design management, there in the last 12 months, and this was from November 2017 to November 2018, 339 individual discrete projects came through the system through that period, and they emerged. They had to be, investigated. Yes, that's a project we want to do, approved through the stage gating, and then go into design. Each project has 3 design stages, and they're child projects in UniPhi. And then within each of those, they actually did cookie cutter the job because it was a bit of an assembly line thing. And so I'll show you how you can do that in UniPhi with issue templates or activity templates. And so there were 12 main activities, but then within each of those activities, there were 6 steps. And then for each of those activities, they would have 4 comments. Now, basically what that adds up to is 291,000 data points for that year, 291,000. Now, there's no way you would ever get a P6 Gantt chart with 291,000 activities. And that's how much actually happened on that job in just a 12-month period. However, if you then wrap the metadata that we know about that, they're time sheeting for those activities. They are, those people have, roles. There's locations where those activities occurred, etc. That's part of overall programs. You get a combination matrix of 582 million data points that you can analyze. And so, this gives you a great ability to control things. How often do we change dates on the task? What's the variations per RFI and comment? benchmark duration feedback loops for historical analysis of actuals, cost per activity per other class of metadata. There's so much information you can start to get out of it. And then now what we're looking at is there anything that we can machine learn that would flag a red flag on a project before anyone else would ever even realize it? And so, word pattern matching for early warning systems, using past performance to predict future performance, optimal portfolio selection, resource constraints versus outcomes required, data cleansing, timesheet data versus task activity type stuff. So there's a whole heap of things you can start to interrogate within that. So what's the implications? We have to get data. We have to get people pumping information into a system that aggregates into a centralized platform that you can analyze. We need to streamline the collection of that data. It needs to help the people doing the data entry. It has to actually enable them to do their job. Closed systems don't allow you to do that. If a file is sitting on my laptop, it can't be accessed by anyone else. And even if it's on a shared drive, it still has to be opened one at a time by different people. We just can't get the data capture we need. New technologies are allowing that to happen, and ours is one of them. We're not alone. You'll get lots of people saying, other applications out there marketing themselves as saying Gantt charts. Where we're going, there aren't any Gantt charts. It's one of their favorite things. So, this is happening. This is finally happening after 20 years. It's finally happening, and it's happening like things tend to happen in this space. Once the change starts happening, it's happening quickly. So that's my sales job for why we do things the way we do it in UniPhi. Now I'm going to show you what I mean by that and how you actually use UniPhi to track information. I'll close down those stickings. I didn't actually use them in the end. So I'm going to start with, we're in a project in UniPhi. Just that everything's captured down at the project level, and then we'll roll back up again. And so, within this project, I have a very high-level stage-gated scheduling. And so we just want to get, 3 months, what can we do, or 1 month, depending on stage gates and how you're structured and the project itself, that will differ. So if I go to schedule from the drilled-in view of a project, we'll get a life cycle. And you can have multiple life cycles in your deployment that match different types of projects. For example, this is a very construction-based one. Internally, you might have just a concept, develop, implement, closeout type one. And you have your dates that you've put in there for your baseline and your actual. And it's just very high level, very simple, not many data points, nice and easy for someone to do. And it's based on guess, because we don't know, because it's a complex project that we're trying to do. So it's like we're going to allow this much time to do the design to get it right. It may be that we need to change it, and we'll formalize and control that change. Then you can see here, if you really wanted to, you could go off and build up your Gantt chart, your abstract of reality, and hope that it has some alignment with actual reality. And we enable you then to bring that data in to synchronize these dates, but also to pull in milestones for reporting. And so here's a Gantt chart. It was done because it was a requirement on a tender for something we did some time ago. And it's got basic little timeline with a schedule and resource plan and links and all that sort of stuff. So all the good stuff, we could get a critical path out of that. What you do then is you save that as an XML file. And so in here, you'll see that the last option is XML. And once you've saved that, you come into UniPhi and you can browse for that. You can do it the same in P6, it has the same option. And you browse off to that particular file. This is the eternal problem, isn't it? Where's it gone? There it is. And that's the XML document there, milestone integration. So I click on that and I hit save and it pulls this data in. And when it does, it'll come up with a new icon called View WBS. And so when I click on that, that's when I can start to do certain things. The entire schedule is there. It's defaulted to level 1. But if I go to level 4, you can see it's all there. And I can say, right, phase 1 configuration is my concept design phase. And by selecting that, every time I upload, if I update my schedule and the dates change, it'll update my life cycle phases, dates, and synchronize on those. Also see that there's these checkboxes on the right-hand side. and I can tick those, and when I do, a add to milestones option comes up. And so clicking add to milestones means that when I go in to the system and to the milestones function within UniPhi, we now have a bunch of milestones there with the dates coming in. The WBS code is the coding number that exists within MS Project, and again, that would synchronize. So if you updated the MS Project schedule, you can then update that into here. You can see that you can also, even if you haven't linked to MS Project, within the scheduling of our system, you can start to link things. So we can link that particular milestone, again, to the phases, so that any push out of dates here will push out the schedule. The challenge there, and on all scheduling tools, I've always found this, that people find that very black box, and it's very hard to know why your dates have changed when you start to link things. But, and especially in a complex environment, it's like very hard to say, is that even a true relationship? Does it even exist? But yeah, the functionality is there, and you can do it, and you can see as well that you can start to track, give it an value percentage to that, and start to track progress on it, and get cost control and value out of it, and CPI and SPI statistics. So we've now got a milestone function here. We'll have a little visualization of that down here, and our old school visualizations, they're not the greatest in terms of look and feel, but they do a job, and they tell us that this project slipped. There's our baseline. Here's the timeline there, and these are the milestones coming in across that Gantt chart. And so, that's a quick visualization on that particular project. It is a Gantt chart. It's some sort of visualization. And so basically what you would do after that is you would manage things through those stage gates. So you'd be looking to try and get, and the milestones within those stage gates. You'd be looking to try and hit each of these phases in a sprint manner. And the way you would start to allocate that work is basically to start using our issues system. And so going into the issues system and creating issues and allocating them out, and then letting people collaborate around those issues. So as I said, some of you on the call today will have this labeled activities. It's been a sort of evolution with always issues, and we're kind of used to it in our core product, but we relabel that activities for quite a lot of people. And so, you're basically creating a description, giving it a category, giving it an assignment, giving it a rating and a due date, and people start to collaborate on that. And to try and demonstrate the difference between this type of time management and a traditional Gantt chart, in this Gantt chart we just showed you a minute ago, there was a task, process analysis and system configuration, right? And it was 5 days. A bit optimistic, to be honest. And again, not really related to reality. But that's all there is in there, right? I mean, yes, in here you could go and write a notes field and type whatever you want in there, but who's going to see it? Who's actually going to get access? You might have a project online and you can use that. And if you clunk all these things together, you might actually get access to that information. Here is the process mapping task of a client we recently rolled out to. And if you look at the bottom, it started with some Visio diagrams and had a conversation start, and you've got emails coming in from the client, and you've got us going back and forth and reviewing what the processes are and getting it right. And you can see the duration there. It's tracking over time, and there's a full-on conversation. There's more files that you can review in this particular one. A whole bunch of actions that have been taken through to get this job done. That was never going to be managed through there. Just an impossibility. And there's another one in here that I was going to show. I think I've closed. No, it's this one here. And so this is, again, our own system. This is our product development. And we had an issue with regards to the filtering and the way they were relating. And so, again, at the bottom, you've got some prototyping of the problem. You've got some options that have been documented. And then you've got a whole bunch of different people, as you scroll up, collaborating around what is it. You had these options. Which one should we do? They're different people, a whole bunch of different people. Then we've got the implementation of it, the actual development and the testing, the test scripts, everything else, and all the actions that have gone on that particular activity over time. And I can actually track and see that this was originally logged in 29th of November, but it wasn't really scheduled out until the 26th of February, and then it took us about a month to complete that particular activity. So, this is the emergence, this is the evolution of the way that projects can get evolved. And so you're working back from your milestones and saying, what do I need to hit? What are the key strategic things I need to do? And then you're trying to prioritize and schedule that work, even though it may already be logged. So initially when it's logged, it would have been logged just as a description at the top, right? The initial activity description, that's it. Wouldn't have been any more than that. And then the requirements and the scope of work is filled out over time. Now, Prince 2 and other methodologies have these things called product descriptions, and project managers try to fill them in completely at the beginning of a project, which is impossible because you just don't know. And you'll see here that the dates of these actions are different. So that's March 7th if you hover over it. So I don't know if you know that you can hover on an action. It'll tell you who created it and when. And as we go up, you'll see 15th of March by a different person created that action. So these tasks are evolving. They're happening constantly, and they're happening by these are software developers, and other people in here are consultants. And they're all collaborating around it, and it's helping them get their job done. But at the same time, for me, I can go into the marketplace and telling people this is when things are going to happen by looking into my system and seeing the due dates of these things and when they're actually going to occur. So if you do that, and if you're allocating all your work within the system and you're prioritizing it, what you may not know is you can then start to get, and I'll use my demo system for that now, views, task views of that. So if you go into all projects, for example, and once you're in all projects, you can then reduce that data set size through any of the filtering that exists in the modal or within the screen itself. And if I scroll down to task view, I basically get a list of all of the things that are scheduled and open in our system across a whole bunch of data types, including risk mitigation actions, milestones, deliverables, and issues with their actions. And so, the entire portfolio is there. All of these are sortable, so I can sort on all of those, and I can also view certain things, like show me what's overdue, and you get the overdue ones. You can see that's really badly overdue, that one. Show me it just for issues in the system or activities, and you get that. Show me them that have been assigned to Annie Lennox from the Eurythmics, who works for us. And so, you have a very quick way to actually view that. And if you're a project manager, you'd be in my portfolio instead of portfolio, and you'd be seeing your team members and what they're doing. And you can then drill in and get more information about those tasks, as you've seen in the demonstration so far. Equally, I can get status updates without running a project meeting, because in the communications tab, anything that happens constantly during the process is coming in here as a sort of a ticker feed, if you like. So, you can go in here and my portfolio reduces it to your view and actually, again, see what is actually being worked on today, yesterday, the day before, and break that down into conversations had from the client, RFIs, emails, and actually to see what is actually being worked on. And so therefore, sitting in a room, going through a Gantt chart line by line and getting an update on status never occurs. It never has to occur again. That time saving and the better quality of life is worth it on its own. Nothing's worse than those status report meetings. Now, I mentioned that you can still get automation processes as well. So within the activity or /issues module, if you've got something that's a standard process, when you go in to create a particular task and it's a standard one, you can select, I'm on the phone today, not headphones, so it's slow in typing, insurance renewal, for example, and give it the category, and then select the template that relates to that. And what will happen is it'll basically automatically allocate the work out and give a due date based on standard durations of that task. If you have the right assignment, the assigned to would come in. You've got all of these actions that you need to follow as a standard process for renewing insurances, and you can see that the due dates have come in as well. They all get configured in the UniPhi configuration engine. So if I go into configuration and go to issues, you'll see now this is a system administrator function, so some of you may not have seen this before. Issue templates, and when you go in there, you can see that you give it a name and a standard duration, which you can get from the analysis that I'm going to show you in a moment, and whether that's business days or calendar days, and is it linked to a certain type of project? You can link that so it only appears when it needs to appear. And then these are the steps you need to do, and this is how many days from the creation of the project you have to do that, and who should be doing it, what role. You can build as many of those as you like, and they'll come into the drop-down on the issue system, and you can start scheduling out those things as and when required. So some people use lags there to give reminders of when they need to follow up on certain things, and a whole bunch stuff around that. So, hopefully we've got all of our team members collaborating in those tools, putting their data in, making their comments on the rest of it. Then we can start to get some high-level tracking. So out of the box in UniPhi, there's a dashboard, and there's a time dashboard. So these are old visualizations, but what we tried to do in those is just to do the simple portfolio stuff that we wanted to communicate. So for example, if I wanted to know when the concept design phase was happening on all of these projects, I select concept design and it just shows me the bars for those ones, which I can then drill in on and see the specific dates for that. Equally, there's a filter up here just to say, well, what's actually slipping or slipped? And we did a project with BlueScope still in 2005 using MS Projects for this sort of stuff, and it consumed them. They did more work on scheduling than they did on actually researching and developing better ways to make steel. So that was a lesson learned for us to see how can we get the right amount of information we need just to know what's slipping on our program and what has slipped. And there it is. You can get it. It's not incredibly pretty, but it's there, and you can click on it and see whereabouts it's slipped. There's your baseline. There's your current forecast or actual, and just the phase you're in now, and there's your milestones. And you can link that back to the issues. Issues can link to milestones, so you can still get your linking, so the dates push out automatically. But the main thing is you get that richness of data as to why things are going astray. Now what we're doing is we're also pulling this data into our Power BI visualization. So in Power BI, and look, you can still get a Gantt, but it's a portfolio Gantt at a high level. And, you've got these endpoints here, and there's milestone and activities/issues and life cycle phases, etc. So you can actually track through what's going on across your portfolio. Equally, there's some funky timeline capability within Power BI that I can just visualize milestones. So if I tick that box, I'm going to get my entire portfolio. Pause for breath a minute. Okay. That's 2 projects and their milestones over time, but now we'll get all of them. And again, grouped by commercial infrastructure, residential, retail, your metadata fields. You can pull in whatever metadata field you like. And you can see how it's interactive. When you hover on it, it shows you the relevant ones if you wish to, and what it actually is comes up when you hover on it. You can also cascade that down across financial years if you want. So clicking that, I've now got the milestones for 2017, 16, 15 going backwards and then forwards into the future as well. Through the colors and through other dynamics, you can start to get a feel for when things are going to happen. So again, a portfolio-based time management that's filterable and created by you. You can do your own creation of this, directly accessing the UniPhi data set through these API endpoints. So, that helps, in the development of those portfolio time management capabilities, all coming from a fairly rich and accurate source of information that's updated daily by the teams on the ground actually delivering the work. Where that's taken us, the last part of the agenda point, is the ability to analyze tasks and what drove them to be late or not. And the sort of way I can demonstrate that now isn't pretty, but it's basically what we're using. So the thing about analysis versus visualization, analysis always has to get down and dirty with the data, whereas visualization is looking at trends and seeing if you can spot something through the visualization. So in this page, what I've got here in this table, and I'll just blow it up a bit so hopefully you can see it. This has split out the text that's in an issue description. What we've done in a separate application is we've stripped out the comments, one word at a time, and then we're able to count how many times that comment is made. And so, for example, on this program, water is commented on all projects more often on projects that are delayed than any other count. And so there's a start to an investigation as to whether we can monitor those sorts of comments coming in on a project and flag that project as being something to investigate because it may not meet benchmark timelines because it has water issues on a brownfield site. And that's the start of machine learning and the ability to flag from a computer system to project managers. Could be false positives, and that's what we need to work through. But, that's where we're going, and that's where, the ultimate endpoint for this is that you can actually use this type of data. We're using Power BI in this instance to to teach us what sort of algorithms we can write, and then our software developers will be building algorithms instead of using this tool to monitor what's being commented in the application and flag that type of stuff. So, I mean, in terms of a summary, like I've seen pennies drop recently around design managers who are managing, large groups of people. But anything greater than 5 people becomes difficult to know what's going on. And using this communications tab to know what's going on, who's doing what today, and then using the summary tab with the tasks view on to know, what's coming up and what's overdue, and what's unscheduled and what's happening in the next 30 days, etc., is really a light bulb moment. It's something that I've seen written on whiteboards instead. Sprint, what are we doing this week? Monday morning team meetings to find out what we're doing this week, all that sort of stuff, and just start to disappear, and people can spend more time actually doing the deliverables that they need to be doing. So that's the sales pitch, if you like, for why we schedule that way and why there isn't an active Gantt chart tool within UniPhi. I'm going to stop the recording now, and wow, I've just missed a bunch of people. Let me stop this. They've changed the app I'm using, and I'm a bit of a novice with it.